Hey guys, it's Ben Beyond Repair here. It's been a while, but I have a little bit of time, so I'm going to try to record some stuff real quick. Obviously, if you've watched a bunch of my videos, you've probably heard me mention that my wife is pregnant and we just had our son. And it's been a super awesome experience. Like so many of us now, we're getting older, we're having families and stuff like that in the league community, and it's been an interesting and wild ride. So there he is. He's absolutely amazing, pretty cute. Yeah. So one thing that I did want to get into, that's pretty topical considering what's happened, is that there are way too many splits in league right now, and the LP gains in high elo are really screwed up. And I don't know if you guys have heard Tyler One rant about this, or if you've heard about this or not. Obviously, people have their opinions on the splits, but I will just give my experience because it's becoming really problematic to the point where even though I like playing the game still, it might just make sense for me to quit the game, which obviously Riot wouldn't want and I wouldn't want and would be bad. So they obviously have to do something about it. So let's talk about why would it be the case that it makes sense for me to quit playing League even though I want to keep playing. The reality is like a lot of people, obviously with life, like we've just talked about, it's not that there has to be a league killer game that comes along that's more interesting than League that gets everyone to play it. It's actually just that the player base ages out and then life happens. And life is more interesting or more important than playing League. And so the League killer all along was not another video game, it was real life. Okay. And the reality is that when you make people reset their rank 3 times a year, that means that they're going to have to play a lot more games because they're going to be spending a lot of games just getting back to where they were before, even if their LP games are good. And we'll get into that in a second because they're not so good, at least especially for high elo players right now. So here's the issue. You've heard me talk about this before. Let's just pull up my account and take a look at the math and the evidence in the situation. So unfortunately, we're going to have to add up the numbers because we can't see, exactly what happened here. But this was my last split. We can see that, I mostly played Braum. So I'm just going to really quickly add up my wins here. 173 on Braum, 26 on Leona, 8 on Jana, 10, 7, 4, 3, 5, 1, 1, 1, 1. So that's all my wins. So I got 240 wins, and we can add up my losses here. 115 on Braum, 14 on Leona, 6 on the Jana, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 2, 2, 1. And then this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games here. So I went 240 and 207. That doesn't sound right to me. Oh, okay, that's including flex. So let's be fair. That's including flex. So let's make sure, because I think I ended about positive 20 games, and we'll get into that. So let me just add these up real quick. So I had 219 wins in solo queue, and I had 150 plus 13 plus 6 plus 3 plus 4 plus 6 plus 5 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1. And then there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here at the end. So I went 219 and 197 in solo queue specifically. And it's actually not that this matters a whole lot, but there was something a little bit weird that happened, which is one of the losses shouldn't actually count because it was one of these games where Vanguard caught a scripter in the game and terminated the game mid-game, and op.gg didn't really know what to do with that, and so it counted as a loss. I actually made a ticket with them, and they said that according to the Riot API, it counted as a loss for both teams. But in my match history, it clearly showed the equivalent of a gray game or a remake. But regardless, look, we can take the extra loss. It doesn't really change the outcome. So I went 219 and 197. Now, again, going back at the account and looking at the account, we can see that I ended Master 406 LP in 2024 Split 1, and I ended plus 12 LP. So that's right, I won something like 22 more games than I lost, 23 if you don't count that game that I didn't actually lose that was terminated. And as a result of winning 22, 23 more games than I lost on four and playing 400 games, I gained 12 LP. So the problem with that math, and we can, add them up here and look at the win rate, is I had 219 wins out of 416. That's a 52.6% win rate or a 53% win rate. Obviously, it would be slightly better, if you don't count that one loss, then it would be 219 out of 415. So then it would be 52.77%. It's really all the same. It's close to a 53% win rate on 400 games played. Problem here is that there's 4 months in a split now, because there's 3 months a year with no preseason, or 3 splits a year with no preseason. So we have 4 months per split. So if I played 400 games in a split, 400 games over 4 months is 100 games a month. There's around 30 days in a month. So we're talking about like 3.3 games a day, a little over 3 games a day. The reality is that if playing 3 games a day to 4 games a day with a 53% win rate in Masters and in High Masters does not get me any progress, basically. The reality is that I would need to play more than that in order to actually climb. I would need to play 5 games a day or 6 games a day. Well, the reality is that as a young father, I don't have time to do that. I don't know how anyone would. Anyone who is taking school really seriously or working or, trying to raise a family or, both or all 3 at the same time definitely does not have 6 hours a day to devote to their hobby. Most people who have a healthy relationship with their hobby probably spend a couple hours on it per week to maybe, we're pushing 7, 10, 12 hours a week, a little over an hour a day or an hour a day. I think that's a healthy hobby. When you're spending, the average person who's playing League, now I don't know how long the average person playing League is spending, but when we're talking about, at least for me as a high elo solo queue player, but getting older, I'm averaging 3 or 4 games a day, right? That's pushing really what is even possible for me to do as an adult anymore, to devote 3 or 4 hours a day to a hobby when I have other things going on, right? That's too much, even at 3 or 4. Because again, a healthy relationship with the hobby would be I take care of work and or school, and I come home and I take care of the house, I make some food, do this, do that, and I have 1 hour or 2 hours that I can spend towards doing something that I really enjoy doing per day. That's the unfortunate reality of life. And so when we're saying, okay, here's the math, if you're a high master, low GM player, whatever, and you're playing 400 games a split with a 53% win rate, and you get no progress for doing that, that means that I have to play, instead of 400 games, I have to play 500 or 600 games. Well, I can't do that. That's just not practical. And the reality is that even if I say, well, okay, I only have time for 3 games a day, right? If my goal is to climb to Challenger for the first time, I've been in GM a few times, in and out, but I haven't ended a split GM, unfortunately. But if my goal is to get to Challenger for the first time, or to end a split in GM for the first time, And those things aren't really achievable unless I can play 5 or 6 or 7 games a day. Then it's not really possible for me to achieve those things, right? And if I'm devoting hundreds of hours, 400 hours a split, maybe 1,200 hours a year, just to get back to the same rank 3 times over and over again, that doesn't do anything for me. That doesn't, that there's no point. I'm just wasting my time at that point because I'm not getting to make any progress. And if, especially as a high elo player or a competitive player, where your goal is to climb, your goal is to get to the new rank, well, if I'm just getting back to my same rank over and over again, there's no point. If I get hard stuck at this point, like, I'm quitting the game because, like, I have too much going on in my life. I have enough on my plate. Like, I can't handle playing, like, doubling or tripling, the amount that I'm playing the game. It's not feasible for me as an adult. So what I'm essentially getting at is that 3 splits is way too many. And the LP gain situation, which we'll get into in a second, is also a huge problem. So forget the LP gain situation. Even just the 3 splits, just talking about last split, not even getting into this split yet. Just last split alone is such a big issue because even if the LP gains are fine, 3 splits a year means that you have to play, you either have to be winning like 55 plus 60% of your games in order to climb, or you have to be playing more than like 400, 500 games a split. Neither of those things is practical because you can't, if you've been playing a lot of League and you're at your peak, winning 53% means you're improving and you're getting better and you're climbing. It's difficult if you've played literally 10,000 games or whatever, like I have, to not be at a rank where, or to be at a rank where you're somehow still able to win 55%. It's just not reasonable. You're going to get to a rank where you're peaked, and then you're going to be winning 50%. So for me to be winning 53% means I'm getting better and I'm climbing, and I should be going up and hitting new peaks. So especially if I'm putting 400 games in. So the issue here is that there are too many splits, first off. Now the second issue is the LP gains. It used to be that your MMR was higher than your ranked placement. And so because your MMR was higher than your ranked placement, when you get placed back at the start of a split, regardless of what rank you were, it could be you were Challenger 1000 LP, and now you're getting placed in, like D4 or D3. Obviously there's a big gap there. And so as a result, because your MMR is not getting reset that hard, your MMR is way higher than your face rank. So you're going to gain plus 35, plus 40 even, minus 16, minus 17, something like that. And then as you've played your first 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 games and you've climbed back to your main rank, then your LP gains will start to stabilize. Well, here's the issue with your LP gains starting to stabilize, or this, this concept that used to exist. The issue with this concept is that it doesn't work that way anymore, because instead of gaining plus 40 or plus 35, all high elo accounts, at least, and maybe it was even the case or is the case, even in like lower elo and like Emerald, Platinum, even in like Gold or whatever. I don't know what's going on there. I haven't had time. Obviously, I don't have time to play on another account. So the issue is that you used to gain like plus 35, minus 15 or whatever when you started out. And that was because your MMR was higher, and then you climb back to your main rank. Even if you're just winning 50% of your games, you're obviously going to climb back to your main rank because you were that MMR before. And the players that you're playing with, even if you're in, Gold 1 and you were Platinum 1 the previous split, you're playing with the same players now that you're in Gold 1, because all the other Platinum 1 players are also in Gold 1 with you. So if you're winning 50% of your games there, you deserve to keep going up with them back to Plat 1. It's just the way it's always worked, and obviously it makes sense. Well, the issue is that that's not happening anymore. Same with my account. Tyler 1 was complaining about it. Same with every high elo account. Agarin, I think, was like 2000 LP rank 1 jungler in EU, and he's gaining like plus 23, minus 17. I'm gaining plus 23 minus 17 as someone who ended 400 LP. And Tyler had an account that was in Challenger with 1,000 LP and NA, and he's in the same situation. In fact, I mean, we can already take a look and see that I've played 55 games already in the first couple of days or so that the split's been out. Kind of grinding a lot, actually. And I'm still in D2. In fact, I don't even have that much LP in D2. I'm D2 28 LP, despite the fact that I have a 56% win rate and I've already put in 45 games. So you can see the issue happening here again. Well, if I put in 45 games and I'm in D2, how many, and I started in, I want to say my first placement game had me in either D4 or Emerald 1 or something like that. So probably D4, but I don't remember. So let's say that was where my first game was like either Emerald 1 60 LP or like D4. Obviously, if I've played 45 games and I've only managed to go up 2 divisions, imagine how long it's going to take me to get back to Master 400 LP. Just do the math. And keep in mind that the first 2 divisions were going to come easier because they were including my placement games, which helped me go up like a whole division just during my placement games. I think I even did really well during my placement games. I think I went like 4-1. And I think my placement games propelled me into D3 from, again, like Emerald 1 or D4. So if I've played 45 games and I've gone from D4 to D2, which is 2 divisions or about 200 LP, well, I need to go another 2 divisions to get to Masters. So that's going to be another 40 or 50 games. And then it's going to be another 40 or 50 games to get to 200 LP and another 40 or 50 games to get to 400 LP. So at the rate that I'm going now, it would probably take me, since I have about 600 LP to go, it would take me 150 games plus the 50 games I've already played. Roughly, I'm at 45, but roughly. So about 200 games to get back to Masters 400 LP. The problem is that, again, if I'm playing only 300, 400 games in a split, which is about 3 games a day, then by the time I get back to my previous rank, I'm going to be at, well over halfway through the split. I'm going to have like a month left. If I'm lucky, I'll have 2 months left. And at that point, it's not really feasible for me to then climb from 400 LP all the way to like Challenger 1000 LP. Is never going to happen for me unless I play like 600 games or something crazy, which nobody has the time to do as a working adult. So if I can't ever get to Challenger, if I can't ever get to a new peak, what is the point of continuing to play the game as someone who, again, plays the game competitively and to climb to a new higher rank? There's not much point, because if I'm choosing to spend 300 hours not doing something else that I would like to do, or not doing something more important and meaningful, like spending time with my family or working on something else that could be more lucrative, what would be the point in spending 300 or 400 hours just to get back to the same rank in League? It doesn't make any sense. In fact, if I was actually just playing League because just out of, let's say, enjoyment for the game, like I would probably, I can't imagine myself just completely quitting the game because I do like playing the game. I might play like an average of once a day. Like if I just wanted to experience playing the game, I'd probably average something like 1 game a day. Like some days I wouldn't play at all. In fact, I already have some days where I don't play at all. But I'd have some days where I don't play at all, and then other days I'd play like 2 or 3 games. Or like I'd queue up for 1 game and then see how it goes. That's just, the problem is that obviously the current system of having 3 splits and having these really low LP gains has resulted in just a monstrous number of games, especially for high elo players, just to get back to the rank that they were previously at. So if it takes you 200, 300 games to get back to the rank you were previously at, no one's going to have time to do that, and people are going to quit playing the game. Which brings me to my final point, which is people are saying, well, are people actually quitting the game? And the answer is yes. Now, this is early season leaderboard, so I don't want you to read too much into the like 270,000 people. But you can check on op.gg on this leaderboard and see how many people have completed their ranked placements this split. I can tell you, as someone who's been like monitoring the leaderboard as a high elo player for a while, that a couple of years ago there were 2 million players or 2 million accounts that completed their placements. Let's be really clear about this as well. Not 2 million players, because a lot of players literally have like 10 accounts, especially in high elo. So it's a very inflated number. But in NA, there were a couple of years ago 2 million players who had completed, or 2 million accounts who had completed their placement games. At the end of last split, and you want to measure end to end, like obviously a lot of people just haven't played their placement games, or there are Smurf accounts and stuff like that that people haven't gotten onto yet. So obviously there's more players than this. But the reality is that the number dropped from 2 million to 1 million. That's end of split to end of split. So unfortunately, we can't see that right now. You can actually go back, think on like way back machine. Let's see if we can find one actually. Okay, let's see if we can find one from like end of season 2022. This is for Korea, so that's not helpful, and I don't think we can change this, can we? Oh, it did work. Okay, so we can see like back in 2022, at the end of the season, there were like 1.65 million accounts that had completed their ranked placement games. This was back December 30th, 2022. So this would have been right around the end of the season or whatever back then. You can go to like, let's see, when would the end of this split have been? Split started on the 25th. So we can like go back and look at like the 24th, for example. You can see that we were down to 1.2 million. And again, this decline has been happening for longer than this. So I remember that there were 2 million personally on here. Maybe that was back in 2020 or 2021. The point is that we've seen a significant decline. So just from, in less than 2 years, from the end of December of 2022, so this was, let's say, the start of 2023 to not even the end of 2024, so under 2 years, we've seen it go from 1.6 million to 1.2 million. So obviously, Riot hasn't released any statistics or really talked about the fact that League is dying in NA, because we're seeing significant percentages of players leaving the game. I said it before, it used to be 2 million. You can just take my word for it as someone who obviously uses the leaderboard on op.gg a lot. At some point a couple of years ago, there were 2 million people in NA. Now, at the end of the split, there were like 1 million. Obviously, we're at the start of a split, so this number right now doesn't matter a whole lot. But that is what's going on. Riot needs to address the fact that there is a 20 to 50% decline in the player base in NA, and actually start dealing with the issue. And I think forcing 3 splits, lowering the LP gains for high elo so it's super hard to get back to where you were, all of these changes are going to cause people to quit the game as people get older and reevaluate, hey, this thing is more important to me, or I'm not making any progress in League anyways because of how many splits there are and how low the LP gains are, so I'm just going to quit and play something else or not play anything. So that's the reality. Not, it doesn't have to be Fortnite coming along and killing League of Legends or some other crazy game or whatever. There doesn't have to be a league killer game. The reality is that real life is killing League right now for a lot of older players. And if Riot doesn't address this issue, NA as a region is going to continue to die and get worse. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that I want to talk about, including like NA's performance at Worlds and like why that is the way that it is and how it gets better or doesn't. And this obviously ties into this a lot. So one thing I'll mention here at the end is that solo queue actually has an impact on competitive, a really big impact. The reason for this is because if the average solo queue player in one region is slightly better, doesn't even have to be by a lot, but is slightly better. If the average gold player in Korea is slightly better than the average gold player in NA, then there is going to be a big difference in the caliber of players at the top tail end of the distribution. I'll show that real quick. So if we pull up Paint, I can show you maybe we just Google overlapping normal distributions. Okay, so here we have a nice picture of overlapping normal distributions. And what you can see is that here is the average of this yellow group. Let's call this NA. And here is the average of this green group. Let's call it, Korea's solo queue distribution. Essentially what we have is a small gap in the average of how good the average player is. So the average Korean player in gold is slightly better than the average NA player in gold. We'll get into why that is. But look at the tail end of the distribution. Whereas for NA, we start to barely get any good players here at all. We can see that for Korea, there's an abundance of players as good as the NA players. And if we think about the fact that we're talking about a very competitive game where maybe only 50 players in each region are actually playing professionally, what we end up with is here are the 50 best NA players and here are the 50 best Korean players. And so the reality is that you get such a big difference at the tail ends of the distribution because you're working with only the top 40 or 50 players. So you get such a big difference at the end of this distribution when you have overlapping distributions like this, that even the worst Korean pro player is probably better than like 90% of NA pro players, just because that's how it works. Now, why is the average Korean gold player better than the average NA gold player? A lot of it has to do with how many people are playing the game. Imagine, this is a common thing in like high school sports that people understand, at least in America. So I'll use that as an analogy. Imagine you have a small private high school and they have 1,000 students. Of those 1,000 students, they're going to pick 20 or 30, people to play on their football team. 22 actually actively playing. Obviously, you're going to have, that would be the minimum number to field an offense and a defense. So you're going to have more than that. You're also going to have, extra people. But the point is, roughly speaking, let's say you pick 30 kids to play on the football team. If you pick your best 30 football players out of 1,000 people, out of only 500 guys, and then you play against a school that is this big public school that has 10,000 kids there, and they have 5,000 guys to choose from. Obviously, the 30 guys that make the football team at that public school are going to be a lot higher quality, higher caliber athletes than the 50 kids that make it on the private school. So, in general, when you have a much bigger population to choose from or to select from, there are going to be more elite level players. And so the top 10 or the best player or the top 30 or whatever the case may be, but that top end of the distribution is going to be way better when you have that way bigger pool to choose from. So it's still early season, so these numbers are a little bit hard to compare. But I can assure you that, from what I've seen in the past, these numbers are pretty much lining up with what we see. We see that there were let's go back and look, 278,000 players in NA who have completed their ranked placement games. It's been 6 days or something since the start of the split. Obviously, it's unfortunate timing. It would be a little bit nicer to do it, at the end of a split when we see exactly how many people. In Korea, there's already 717,000 accounts. So you can see that the population that is playing League in Korea is literally 3 to 4 times bigger than the population that's playing League in NA. So even though there are way more Americans in general, this is one of the reasons why America and China perform very well during the Olympics. I mean, there's other factors than just this one thing, like training programs and stuff like that. Same thing could be said for League. But the reality is that if there's 3 or 4 times the number of people playing, you're obviously not going to be as good as that region. And in fact, none of your professional players are going to be likely to be better than even the worst Korean pro players. So this is the main contributing factor. If we look at even Europe, right, has 653,000 accounts, and that's just Europe West. You also have EU Nordic East, and some of those players are obviously going to funnel into EU LCS. So, or LEC, or whatever they want to call themselves now. So obviously the point is, and China is even more than Korea. Unfortunately, we can't see China. China's got like 30 different servers, and they're different in some ways. So they've never, been public and shown on op.gg like this. I don't know. Maybe there's some Chinese website you could use to look at how many players are on the Chinese ladder, or all the different Chinese ladders. But the point is that regardless of the United States and Canada and Mexico being large countries in terms of population, the United States especially, obviously, there just aren't that many people playing League compared to Korea. So per capita, per person that exists in the United States, far fewer people are playing League than in Korea. So this is the main contributing factor to like why is NA not doing as well at Worlds as EU or Korea and these other regions. It's because there's not any competition in the region, because nobody plays solo queue, because the game is actually dead and dying here. So even if you compare NA to like some of the teams that they were performing poorly against, or like regions that they're maybe getting outperformed by, Brazil has just slightly less players. And again, this is a little bit imprecise because we're only 6 days into the start of the split, but it looks like there's a similar number of players playing League in Brazil as there are in all of NA. And if we go to like Latin America, there's less, but so there's only like 138,000 here in Latin America North, but there's Latin America North and Latin America South, and they're no longer 2 separate regions, at least for competitive, they're combined. So now if you add 130,000 plus 127,000, we're hitting about the same mark, 270,000 in NA, 240,000 in Brazil, something like 257,000 or so in Latin America. So these are actually very similarly sized regions in terms of number of players. And so it's not a huge surprise, actually, that NA is performing, about the same as these other regions, or not as well. So this is just the reality of the situation. Now, maybe this problem that I'm talking about with the game being just too time consuming is not an NA exclusive problem. So maybe them fixing this problem would actually increase player counts across the board or something like that. But the point is that the game quality is going to get worse, and the region is going to get worse if Riot doesn't do something to address the fact that it doesn't make sense for young adults, especially people like myself who are having kids and starting family and stuff like that and working. Just doesn't make sense for us to play the game anymore with how long it takes to climb, how many games they expect you to play per split, and how low the LP gains are. So Riot needs to address these issues and fix it. Otherwise, we're going to go from 2 million to 1.6 million to 1.2 million, and eventually NA is just going to dwindle and die as a region. And it's going to affect the quality of competitive play, the quality of games in high elo, even the quality of your solo queue games across the board in all ranks. So, it's a bit of a tough pill to swallow, but Riot hopefully will do something about it and make the game actually playable and climbable for your average day average everyday Joe playing the game. Good luck in solo queue on this somber note, and have a wonderful day.